Well, CHistrue here, and maybe making a couple of videos, 2, maybe 3, I don't know, before my life gets a little bit heavier. I get a little bit more, a whole lot busier, and hopefully it'll be in a good way. But I want to discuss our concept of rights and how nature figures in. You know, oftentimes when we talk about rights, we talk about just the human sphere, and nature becomes an afterthought. But we forget something, and that is, the more we learn and study about animal behavior, the more we come to understand that there are obviously other species with incredible intelligence. Chimpanzees, goes without saying. Dolphins, that's almost cliche now, but slime molds that can figure out patterns. Corvids, birds, octopi. This is getting crazy here. We might well have a forest filled with Albert Einsteins here. I mean, what's going on? Well, okay, maybe we gotta have a certain degree of, and I know this will upset radical ecologists, but a certain degree of a hierarchical view of things where we have gradations. And I know that upsets people in some circles of the environmental movement. But remember that hierarchicalism and rights, although it might be reactionary from an egalitarian standpoint, at least it isn't all or nothing. At least you don't have humans with all the rights and every other living creature as being some kind of biological machine. So, again, if there is an ethical advance towards some kind of biocentrism or some type of ecological egalitarianism, that's not going to happen all at once. It will not happen tomorrow. It would be best to at least start off by having a conversation about the rights of non-human creatures. And we better have one, because the way it looks from, unfortunately, and I oppose this very deeply, but it looks as though with the genetic experiments going on in laboratories across the country and throughout the world, we might actually see genetic hybrids, intelligent creatures, and as it is, under current law, it looks like they would not have any rights. In our own country, the 14th Amendment should define personhood as personhood. That is, it doesn't say human, it says person. However, in fact, the precedent of the 14th Amendment is that the concept of person is not hooked to biology, because at that time, the difference between types of humans was very much of something that was an exaggeration in the 19th century consciousness. And the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments they were at least some kind of attempt to address that exaggeration. Today, in the future, maybe 1,000 years from now, we might look back and say that species is the same kind of exaggeration. I mean, if we evolved from a common origin, then maybe we're a lot more like one another than we would suppose, okay? As it is, humans and chimps share 99% DNA. However, from our standpoint of thought today, we do view the different species through a very exaggerated lens. Do we have something akin to the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to address that? If we don't, we might be headed for a deep, deep, deep moral hazard. Fortunately, there are people advocating for the rights of chimps and the rights of dolphins and the rights of, to some extent, other animals, and that's good. But it's not enough. And not only is it not enough, but the trend seems to be going back in the other direction. We have the hunting of wolves again. We have the attack on the Endangered Species Act. We have the attack on the idea of animal rights. We have the attack on the idea of saving the environment. And these are very vicious attacks that come from talk radio show hosts. They come from supposed philosophers. Unfortunately, some of the animal rights activists well, like Peter Singer also has very questionable moral views. I would not have him as a leader. But they've also, even some of the more honest ones, have had very questionable views. Sometimes you can get very extreme. You know, not the idea that the whole human race has to become vegetarian and it has to be done tomorrow. That's not realistic. So what is realistic is that we have certain basic rights that should apply to all slaughterhouses, that they should be humane, and that this is not optional, that there is no right of the, I know in some states they have what are called libel laws, where you can't expose the conditions. Well, I read the First and 14th Amendments as saying I have the right to any kind of political speech I want, and I won't be intimidated one way or the other. Those laws, as far as I'm concerned, have no moral authority. But, you know, even Oprah Winfrey was terrified of the legal power, and I guess she settled out of court. Terrifying state of affairs. And we need to have this debate around animal consciousness, and we need to have a set of rights that apply to non-human animals and even plants that are not debated. They are not optional. They are not going to be circumscribed by powerful corporate agricultural interests or GMO interests or genetic interests that want to create genetic hybrids, chimeras, that just won't be tolerated. That their obstruction will not be tolerated. And if we don't, then 1,000 years from now, we'll look back on our time the way that we look back on the time of slavery. Your memory will be damned in the future by future generations. So again, at the very least, we need to do, and we are discussing the rights of non-human primates. I think that's a good thing. There is talk of the rights of great apes, and this is good. We're making progress. Dolphins, it seems like the military actually the military, I think, has stopped doing experimentations on dolphins, and there's talk of the rights of whales. And, you know, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Among paranormal claims, I think that one of the better paranormal claims would be the Sasquatch claim. Now, I know. I'm gonna never hear the end of it, but I think that there's more proof of some kind of a creature out there, some Bigfoot, Sasquatch, whatever you want to call it. I think there's more proof of that, frankly, than there is proof that we're a functioning democracy. And yet, the very same establishment intellectuals who think of Bigfoot as some trailer park thing are the very people who go on and on and on about how we have a functioning Congress, a functioning presidency, a functioning Supreme Court, how the system we have is wonderful, and how Wall Street is great. But there's no evidence of that. It's neither descriptive nor predictive. In the case of Bigfoot, we have credible eyewitness accounts. Also a lot of hoaxes for sure, but I think that there's something there. That's my opinion. I don't have the bones or the evidence. The point being that I would understand, though, maybe mainstream scientists keeping a lid on it. Very simple reason. In this one instance, I think the cover-up might be benign. And that is, if you start letting out that there's something out there, suddenly Bigfoot becomes traditional Chinese medicine. Bigfoot becomes a moving target for rednecks. Bigfoot becomes, just look at what we have done to species throughout the globe. Tigers, rhinoceroses, lions, dolphins, chimps, you name it. Unless we have a discussion, a real discussion on the rights of non-living creatures, that's not simply for their aesthetic beauty or how cute they look or how cuddly they are, because they're not always cute and cuddly, but the idea of an inherent right to life, then, yeah, I would probably keep something like Sasquatch a secret also. But the reason I really mention Sasquatch, if it exists, and that's an if, of course, is that, it would be an example of a primate that would be human-like, that would have our level of intelligence. We would not be alone even among the bipedal apes that live on the planet. But the short end of it is whether Bigfoot exists as a literal entity or as a meme, maybe as a myth, as an idea. I like the symbolism of the wild man. Because the wild man is something wild in ourselves that we have to honor. I mean, whether myth or reality, the mythos I honor. Because it's from wildness that civilization will truly be preserved. This is CHistrue, signing.